The Adventures of Poppy and the Spy Cat. Theft at the Dead Letter Hotel by L. Anna Ellis. Chapter 1. Poppy at the Spy Museum. Meow. The cat hidden in my backpack was getting restless. I shouldn't have snuck him into the museum, but I felt bad leaving Blackie alone at home while I was gone. I glanced over my shoulder at the museum guard. He was staring in the opposite direction, thankfully, and not paying attention to the meowing. I swung my backpack around to hang in front and opened the top flap a few inches. Two deceptively innocent amber eyes glowed in the dark of the backpack. "Quiet," I said in a low voice. "You're going to get me kicked out." I knew he didn't understand me, but I talked to him anyway. The eyes narrowed. Meow. It was quieter but more demanding than the first. I could swear he was pouting. It was a silly thought, right? Cats don't pout. I glanced back at the security guard. He was frowning at a group of rowdy teens. I opened the cover further and stuck my face close to the opening of the backpack. Only Blackie's eyes showed in the dim light. Like most cats, he blended into the shadows like a ghost. "Keep quiet and I'll tell you all about the cool spy gadgets when we get home." Meow. I took that as Blackie agreeing. Sometimes I wished he could talk. Then I wouldn't have to guess what he wanted. The Spy Museum was the coolest museum. I liked it so much my only wish for my 12th birthday had been a membership so I could go whenever I wanted. It was only a 15-minute walk from our home on safe streets, so Mom didn't really have a reason to say no. Last week when I opened the card for Mom, it said, "Spy Museum All-Access Membership. Best gift ever." As a homeschooled kid with a mom who worked all the time, I didn't have much of a schedule. I'd gone to the museum every day since my birthday. That was how I learned the word espionage. It was a handy word that sounded a lot fancier than spying. This was the first time I'd brought Blackie with me to the museum. I probably shouldn't have chanced it, but I couldn't stand the thought of him being cooped up in our room all alone. He gets lonely when I'm gone, and then when I come home, he bugs me for head scratches for hours afterwards. "Look at this," I whispered. I pointed at an exhibit about how cats had been used as spies, even though I knew he couldn't see it or understand me. It says cats were used for espionage in the 1960s. The exhibit said the cats used as spies in the 60s did okay while they were being trained, but then when they were taken to a foreign place, they got disoriented. I wasn't surprised. That's exactly how I would feel. A hard whack in my back knocked me to my hands and knees. My glasses flew off my face and my vision blurred. One of the rowdy teens tumbled over my back and fell to the ground beside me. The cover flap on my backpack stretched open, and a black shadow rocketed out and into a hole behind the exhibit. Nearby, the teens laughed and said words I'm not allowed to say. "You knocked your glasses off," one of the teens accused his friends. "I didn't mean to," the kid on the ground said next to me. "Hey," the guard yelled, pointing an accusing finger at the teen on the ground. "Stay right there." I didn't dare move while the guard stormed in our direction. I'd look for Blackie as soon as I knew I was in the clear. The teen got up and cursed at his friends. The guard grabbed his arm. Turning to the other teens, the fed-up guard said, "You all need to behave or you'll get kicked out too." The guard turned to me. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded without speaking. The handful of other people around stared at the guard, hauling the teen towards the exit. Now was my chance to look for Blackie. I shoved my glasses back on my face and crawled on my hands and knees to where he had disappeared. The bottom of the exhibit case was a metal box, kind of like an extra-large suitcase. In the corner of the box, near the wall, the metal had pulled away, leaving an opening just big enough for Blackie. I glanced around. Everyone was staring at the teens who were fussing at the guard for hauling off their friend. It was now or never if I wanted to get Blackie back. I tugged on the side of the metal cabinet. The bending metal groaned as it gave a little. I glanced back at the room. No one was looking at me. Thankfully, the boys were making a lot of noise. I pulled some more, harder this time. It was a small hole, but I could probably squeeze through. I stuffed my backpack through and then got on my belly and crawled. One of my braids caught on the twisted metal and a couple of hairs ripped out. I gritted my teeth to keep from yelping from the sting. I pushed through the side of the exhibit case with the metal scratching at my clothes. Mom was going to have a fit when she saw my torn shirt. One more quick push of my feet and I was through the hole into the box. I spun around on my knees and hunched over to peer out through the hole. No one seemed to have noticed. Luckily, the museum wasn't that busy. Pretty much everyone there was in the group of teens now arguing with the guard. The dim museum lighting also helped. I didn't know why they kept museums so dark, but I guessed it was to protect all the old items. The metal side wall of the cabinet creaked when I pushed it back into place. I didn't want anyone to notice it had been moved. I tried to figure out where I was, but without lighting, it was mostly murky shadows. All I could tell was that I was crouched in a boxy space that looked a lot like the cabinets under our bathroom sink. It even had wooden doors on the side opposite the museum, with one of them open just wide enough for Blackie to squeeze through. I pushed the cabinet door outward. It opened into an area about the size of a small classroom, lit only by a pale glow from some computers and other devices I didn't recognize. There was no one else in the room. I climbed out of the cabinet. I was going to be in so much trouble if anyone found me here. Mom would probably take my membership to the museum away, if the museum didn't ban me first. A bunch of tables lining the room had papers organized in neat piles and stacks of other items. Shelves on each of the walls held even more objects that I didn't recognize. A regular door to the side probably led to a hallway. A thick string wound from a shelf across the ceiling and attached to the lever handle on the door. I let my eyes adjust and then spotted Blackie cowering under a table in the far corner. I closed the cabinet door so he couldn't escape again and moved slowly towards him. "It's okay, Blackie. Let's get you out of here before anyone finds us."
"I'm afraid it's quite too late for that," a deep voice growled. "I never would have let him near the food, but he got past me."
I scanned the room for the owner of the deep, velvety voice, but no one was there. My heart pounded. "Who's there?" I asked. Maybe it was the dim lighting, but I still couldn't see anyone. "Where are you?"
"If you wish to find me, look on the shelf behind you."
I spun around to face the wall with the cabinet, my braids flying out before hitting me in the face when I stopped moving. I brushed them aside. 2 wooden shelves covered in mysterious items clung to the wall above the cabinet. I scanned both shelves, but didn't see a speaker or anything that could be the source of the voice. The shelves weren't well lit, though, and there was a lot of stuff on them. Even a lifelike stuffed cat with gray tiger stripes that looked like it was staring at me. "I don't see anything," I said.
"Must I connect the dots for you?" the voice demanded. "You are looking directly at me. You talk to your cat. Why do you find it so hard to believe a cat might talk back?"
It was the gray tabby talking. It had to be. "But," I struggled for words, "but you're a cat."
"If that's the best observation you can come up with," the cat flicked its tail, "you should get your money back from whatever school you go to."
I sniffed. I'm homeschooled. Yes, it was mostly self-guided, so I may have missed some important topics, but when I took the tests, I did pretty well on them. I put my hands on my hips. I'm pretty sure even the best school in DC doesn't teach anything about talking cats.
"You misunderstand me."
The cat jumped down onto one of the tables.
"But never mind. I assume the dolt in the corner is with you. It appears to have a similar level of intelligence."
I looked over at Blackie. He had found a pink ceramic bowl with food in it and was purring while gobbling it up. "Is that your food?" I asked. I didn't particularly like the gray cat, but I didn't want it to go hungry either.
"What a silly question. Do you imagine my human sits on the ground licking food from a plate? Of course it is my food."
"Yes, sorry, I'm just not used to talking cats.
How is it? If you had read the exhibit, you would know that cats have been used as spies for centuries. We are good at slipping into places unnoticed. However, the typical cat, such as yours, would wander off, and instead of going where it was supposed to, it would chase mice or clean its rear end. As a result, your kind created a serum to put in cats' food to make us smarter, a better spy."
"And it works?"
"I'm speaking to you, aren't I? It should be clear to you that I'm smarter than a human."
The tabby jumped up on a hair shelf like a lion surveying the savannah.
"Your cat, Blackie, is it? He appears to actually like you."
I stood up straighter. "Of course he does." Blackie picked up his head. "Meow." I crossed my arms. "See, he likes me."
"He needs a collar."
The tabby used its paw to push a collar over the edge of the shelf. It clattered onto the table below. I still didn't trust what my eyes were seeing. Why doesn't the exhibit on cats mention you? All that it says is cats were used a long time ago for spying. It doesn't say that spy cats still exist and can talk and understand orders. The gray cat jumped down onto the table next to the collar and placed a paw on it.
"First, a spy tool is much more effective if people don't realize it exists. Second, I have asked my colleagues to not share that I can talk. I'm worried for my safety."
That made sense. As much as a talking cat could make sense. I nodded. "Okay." The tabby pushed the collar in my direction with his paw.
"Here you go."
I was glad to finally have a collar for Blackie. Mom kept saying she was going to get one, but she was too busy. Being the head of housekeeping in a luxury hotel was a pretty demanding job. Or that's how she described it. Plus, she wasn't thrilled when I bought Blackie home because she figured would get fired if the hotel found out. They were generous in letting us live in an apartment in the basement, but they probably would draw the line at a cat. I picked up the collar. Blackie, let's get this collar on you. Blackie came out from under the table and rubbed against my legs. I slipped the collar onto his neck. It was a brilliant light blue that stood out nicely from his black fur. Even better, it matched the color of my sneakers perfectly.
Let me calibrate it, the tabby said.
What do you mean? I asked. The tabby walked on top of a tablet that appeared to respond to his paws. He stepped on a bunch of buttons and eventually sat back and jabbed at one final button.
There you go. You should go now.
I felt like I was missing something, but I nodded and put the backpack on the floor. Come on, Blackie, let's get you in the backpack. Meow.
Blackie, the tabby said. My name is Jeremiah.
Blackie brushed up against me. Meow.
Jeremiah flicked an ear. Use your words, Blackie.
Jeremiah.
I gasped. That was all Blackie said, but that one word was huge. Blackie could talk. And he understood what the other cat said to him.
What's going on? I asked. What have you done? Jeremiah jumped back onto the higher shelf as if to get out of my reach.
Technically, it's what Blackie did to himself when he stole my food. The collar translates his thoughts into words.
I raised an eyebrow at Blackie. Was it true? Could he really speak? Blackie, can you talk? Poppy, love you. Blackie said my name. My heart leapt and my eyes filled with tears. He said my name. I wiped a happy tear from my cheek. Jeremiah said,
Soon he'll be able to speak in full sentences. He'll also be able to sense small changes in temperature and will have enhanced hearing.
Jeremiah cleared his throat. It sounded like a bit of a growl.
There's just one catch.
A catch?
It only lasts for a day. The spy agency that created the food didn't want a bunch of intelligent cats who could reveal their secrets running around without any way of stopping them. So around this time tomorrow, he won't be intelligent or able to speak any longer.
But I wanted Blackie to be able to speak. But was it fair of me to ask Jeremiah to share his food? Like food, Blackie said. More tomorrow? Jeremiah, I asked. Maybe Blackie can eat the food again sometime? Just every once in a while. Jeremiah's fur stood on end.
I watched you at the museum today.
Jeremiah nodded at a set of screens that were showing camera footage from around the museum.
You seem nice enough, and I wouldn't mind some feline company, but according to Section 3.A, subsection 59-G of the Feline Intelligence Agency's Code of Clandestine Cat Comportment, the consumption of spy cat food by any non-authorized cats is strictly prohibited.
That was a lot of complicated information, but if I understood Jeremiah correctly, he was saying he wasn't allowed to share his spy cat food. I knelt and scratched Blackie's ears. I'm sorry, Blackie. I think that means no. Blackie bumped me with his head. It's okay, Pop. One day enough to say, I love you. Blackie was already using more sentences.
Jeremiah said. You all need to go before my human handler returns.
I held the backpack open. Blackie jumped in, turned in a circle, sat on his haunches, and popped his head out the top. The gray cat pulled himself tall and looked down at Blackie like Mom does when she's being very serious.
One more thing. Blackie, for the next day you're a member of the Spy Cat Club. You must never tell anyone or let a human hear you speak other than your handler and trusted insiders.
'Kay, Blackie said. Am I his handler? I asked.
Will you be the main person who helps him with his spy mission and make sure his identity as a spy cat is protected?
I think so.
Then you're his handler.
I closed the backpack and slid my arms through the straps. We'll be back at the museum tomorrow. Will we see you? I asked.
I think not. I don't enjoy fraternizing with non-intelligent cats. The conversation is rather dull.
He tilted his head like he was listening.
Go now, out that door.
He hooked a claw in the string and tugged. On the other side of the room, the string pulled the handle up and the door opened.
If anyone sees you, say that you were looking for the bathroom.
At the door, I looked back. I felt a lot of emotions. Happiness that Blackie could talk, but sadness that it wouldn't last. I decided to do what I always did. Make the best of the situation. I'd enjoy having a talking cat while I could. I smiled and slipped out the door. Chapter 2. Blackie Talks a Lot. Blackie hadn't stopped talking since we made it out of the spy museum without getting caught. In the 10 minutes since we had left the museum, Blackie started talking in full sentences. Jeremiah was right when he said it would happen quickly. On the way out, I kept thinking someone would notice the little voice coming from my backpack, but the museum was noisy and people were staring at the exhibits. Now that we were on the way home, the only sound other than Blackie talking was the bells ringing in the tower at the hotel. Blackie changed positions in the backpack. I hear that sound from our room. What is it? Almost every day of my life, the bells had rung for around an hour in the afternoon. I was so used to it that most days I didn't even notice them anymore. It's the bells in the hotel tower, I said. I like it, Blackie said. We were about 5 minutes from the hotel, and the big challenge now was getting to our room without anyone noticing. Especially not Miss Bertha, the manager of hotel operations. I had two choices for avoiding Miss Bertha. Stay in the public places where she didn't spend as much time, but I would get in huge trouble if she saw me there. Or go through the side corridors and private areas where I was allowed to be, but would probably run into her. With Blackie talking nonstop, it was probably better to stick to the public spaces. The noise would help cover up any talking coming from my backpack. Hopefully I wouldn't run into Miss Bertha, but if I did, I needed to prepare Blackie to be quiet. Blackie, remember what Jeremiah said. You're a member of the Spy Cat Club now. You can't let anyone know you can speak. Right, of course. I could feel him moving around in the backpack. But I like talking. Blackie's voice was small and childlike compared to Jeremiah's. Was it just because their collars were different? Or was it their different personalities? Blackie headbutted me through the backpack. I stuck a hand in through the top and scratched his ears. Blackie purred from the ear scratching. I'm so happy I can talk. Blackie might not know how to be quiet. I'm so happy you can talk too, I spoke in a low voice, hoping he would do the same. Now you need to practice being quiet because we'll be at the hotel in a few minutes. Having a talking cat was my dream come true. Living in a hotel and being homeschooled wasn't good for my social life, especially as Miss Bertha thought I should spend all my time in the apartment. If she had her way, they'd lock me in and throw away the key. The only good thing was that Mom felt so bad about me spending lots of time alone that she let me keep Blackie. And until tomorrow, Blackie could talk. I wouldn't have to hold conversations with myself anymore. I grinned, but it was only going to last for one day. I stopped smiling. A block away, the Dead Letter Hotel rose above the DC skyline. With its towers and turrets, it was the most fascinating building I had ever seen. A lot of the buildings around the hotel, with all their concrete and small windows, looked like they could survive the apocalypse. Rising up between them, the century-old hotel was elegant and mysterious. Poppy, I love you. I love you too, Blackie. We're almost to the hotel, so time to stop talking. Poppy, why do we live in a hotel? I sighed. Having a talking cat was exhausting, but worth it. If I tell you the story, do you promise to be completely quiet when we get there? I promise. Okay. Mom is the head of housekeeping. She needs to be nearby in case there's a problem with one of the rooms, so the hotel lets us stay in an apartment in the basement. Plus, we can't afford to live anywhere else in DC. Are we poor? Yes. No. Sort of. Mom says we're rich in laughter and joy. It was something Mom said to make me feel better when she couldn't afford to buy me something. Am I your only friend? Blackie hit a nerve, but I wasn't ready to admit it. I have lots of friends. Sure, my only two friends were adults, and they spent most of their time working, and one was Mom, but they still counted. But remember that time you were crying and you said you remember that? I interrupted. You weren't smart then. How do you remember? I remember everything. It just didn't make sense to me then. We were almost within earshot of the doorman standing under the arches that led to the main entrance. I stopped walking and opened the top of the backpack. I put my phone to my ear so it would look like I was talking to someone on the phone. It was a trick I had learned about at the museum. We're here. Time to be quiet. And if you aren't quiet, I swear I won't give you any more of that tuna you like. It was an empty threat. Of course, I was going to give Blackie more tuna, and he knew it. Meow. You couldn't be so mean to me. I'm shutting up, but it's just because I don't want to get you into trouble. Thanks. A good spy can move in plain sight but not be noticed. I just needed to practice acting like a spy. I didn't have a disguise and I was too young to blend in with the adults, so I would have to find another way to stay hidden. I nodded to the doorman on the way in. He nodded back, apparently unaware that there was anything odd going on. So far, Operation Fly Under the Radar was going perfectly. I passed one employee and he barely noticed I was there. The grand lobby was 10 stories tall with the roof made out of glass. At one end, a few guests were sipping drinks in a lounge area covered in marble and peacock blue velvet. At the other end, the hotel's restaurant took up an entire end of the lobby and didn't have many guests this time of day. In between the lounge and the restaurant, the registration desk spanned about half of the long side of the lobby. In the middle of the room, a group of tourists followed a chatty docent giving a tour and sharing facts about the history of the hotel. I slipped behind a large square column and listened for the tour group to pass. Nothing made Miss Bertha more mad than when the tour group saw me. It's like she thought I was personally running off potential hotel guests just by my presence. The docent cleared his throat. When construction finished in 1899, this building was the city post office for the District of Columbia. It has almost been demolished twice until finding its true calling as a luxury hotel. Over the century since it was built, the building had gone through so many renovations that it was full of hidden spaces that only I knew about. I was the only one who had the time to look in all the dark places that no one else ever did. I told Mom about them, but I don't think she paid attention. She had more important things to worry about. A bellman's cart swung around the pillar in front of me. The luggage cart had a platform for the bags and metal bars that arched together at the top. That cart could only mean one thing. My friend Nikki was nearby. A goofy face with floppy hair and a big smile appeared around the column. Nikki was wearing his bellhop uniform, a red jacket with 2 rows of gold buttons down the front, and a weird hat that looked like someone stole it off of a cartoon character. "Fancy a ride, Daffodil?" He nodded at the cart. I peered around the column back at the lobby. The gray-haired docent was talking about how the buildings used to have the post office's dead letter room where undeliverable letters were sent for processing. That's how the hotel got its name. The docent didn't show any sign of wrapping up soon. I smiled and nodded. "Yes, please." I jumped onto the cart, crossed my legs, and grabbed onto the metal bars. "Are you prepared for warp speed, Azalea?" Nikki asked. "Yes!" I wanted to ask Blackie if he was okay with riding on the cart, but I needed to be careful who I trusted. Nikki was already nice to me, even though he was a lot older than me. Like at least 5 or 6 years older. Sometimes adults can be weird and not good at keeping secrets. So I shut my mouth. Chapter 3. Poppy rides a luggage cart. Nikki grabbed the cart. "Are you sure you're ready? We'll have to proceed full speed ahead before Sir Tour Guide over there sees us." "Wait!" I had an idea. "We need a diversion." It was Spycraft 101. Create a distraction so people don't notice what you're doing. Maybe we can use the front desk? Perfecto! Nikki plucked his walkie-talkie off the belt of his red bellhop uniform and pressed the button. "Front desk, the docent has informed me that one of the guests in his tour group lost their room key, but he didn't tell me which one. Perchance can you assist them?" "Of course," the voice on the walkie-talkie said. "I'm on it." Over and out. Nikki clipped the walkie-talkie back on his belt. We peered around the column. The woman from the front desk approached the group. The docent looked upset at the interruption. The guest seemed impatient, and the front desk woman was confused. "Now's our opening, Buttercup," Nikki said. He leaned over, placed his hands on the crossbars, and put one foot behind him like a sprinter ready to take off. With one more glance over his shoulder at the confused and distracted tour group, he sprinted through the lobby towards the private corridors. The cart shuddered and bounced. I laughed nervously. Seconds later, we passed through the doors into the private area. The cart jolted forward as we went from the thick carpet in the public areas to the plain white tile in the employee area of the hotel. A loose wheel on the cart clattered and twisted around like a plastic bag in a hurricane. We hurtled toward a wall. "Nikki!" I braced myself with one hand on the cart and wrapped the other around the backpack to protect Blackie. "Have no fear, little one," Nikki cried out. Just before the white wall hit me in the face, Nikki took the corner. The cart skidded and went on 2 wheels. My hands clenched the bars and my knuckles turned white. I thought I heard a little complaint from Blackie. I laughed again. Was it from fun? Or terror? Maybe it was both, like when Mom took me on the roller coaster last summer. Mrs. Bertha's form stepped in the hall in front of us like a brick wall. Nikki pulled the cart to an abrupt stop. Unfortunately, I didn't stop. I flew forward and ended up on my hands and knees on the cart. I looked up at Miss Bertha. We were busted. She firmly planted her hands on her hips. "Mr. Nicholas, this behavior is unacceptable." "But, ma'am, we're in the private quarters of the hotel." I think even Blackie could have predicted that it wouldn't go over well with Miss Bertha. She made an unhappy noise. "Running is never acceptable by employees, and giving rides on luggage carts is intolerable." Nikki looked at the ground. "My apologies, Miss Bertha. I forgot my station." Miss Bertha turned her fierce gaze at me. I was hoping she would continue to ignore me. "Go to your room. I'll follow up with your mother later." Mom was going to have a fit. She liked Nikki but thought he wasn't mature enough to be working at the hotel. This wasn't going to change her opinion. I bowed my head. "Yes, ma'am." I walked down the hall and rounded the corner. Out of sight, I positioned myself right where the sound waves from Miss Bertha's voice bounced off the wall. That's what real spies do. It was the perfect spot to eavesdrop on what she was saying. "Mr. Nicholas, the guests enjoy your folksy charm, but this is unsupportable." It didn't sound like Miss Bertha liked folksy charm. "I'm going to have to talk with the head bellhop about this. I will make my decision about whether you will continue to be employed here after I speak with him." Nikki fidgeted and stared at his feet. "Yes, ma'am, I understand." I peered around the corner. Miss Bertha had her back to me. "Now get back to work," she said to Nikki. He fidgeted and stared at the ground. "Now!" Nikki startled. "Yes, ma'am." He spun on his head and his heels and headed back down the hall, dragging the bumpy cart behind him. "And fix that wheel," Miss Bertha yelled after him before returning to her office and slamming the door behind her. Had Miss Bertha mentioned firing Nikki? I couldn't let that happen. Nikki was my only friend other than Mom, and he was the only one who didn't treat me like a kid. Plus, it wasn't his fault. He was helping me out, just like he always did with all the guests. "Blackie, I want to spy on that talk Miss Bertha is going to have with the head bellhop." "Me too." "Let's figure out a spy plan." Meow. Mom wasn't in the room when I got back to our basement apartment. There was a note on the kitchen counter from her. "I've gone out to talk to a guest who says her sheets aren't soft enough. If you need me, I'm in room 304. I'll be back soon. Love you." Mom often had to work on Sundays. I didn't mind. She usually tried to get back to the room as soon as she could. Today I was hoping she would stay away a little longer so I could talk with Blackie. I put my backpack down on the counter in the small kitchen by the door. Blackie was out in a second and zooming over to the living area. The kitchen and living area were all one room, not to mention the office in the corner where I had my small desk with a large stack of books. Blackie used a set of boxes that I had arranged for him to jump up to the two small windows high up on the wall. The windows in our rooms weren't much bigger than large pizza boxes, but the ledge was deep enough for Blackie to stretch out. He settled onto the pillow I left in the window. "Can I talk? I'd like to talk now." "You can talk for now, but if Mom comes back, you have to go back to being a normal cat." "I promise to start licking my butt as soon as your mom walks in the room." "Blackie!" I laughed and rolled my eyes. "What? You said to be a normal cat." When Blackie could no longer talk, it would all seem so boring. I grabbed a lemonade out of the fridge and crossed into the living area with the couch, coffee table, armchair, computer desk, and bookshelf. The hotel provided our furniture, so it was mostly nice stuff that had seen better days. The computer desk wobbled, the coffee table had scratches so deep they couldn't be fixed, and the peacock blue velvet on the couch had worn through in places. Speaking of peacock blue, it's an odd color. A light blue with a touch of gray. It was like it didn't know what color it wanted to be. It was all over the hotel, especially in velvet. Even the curtains and the headboard in the small bedroom were peacock blue velvet. "Can I have a treat?" Blackie asked. "I'd really like tuna juice, but I'd settle for some of that liver pate." "I'm not opening a can of tuna just so you can drink the juice." "I'll take the pate then." "Give me a second and I'll get you some of the hard treats." "Fine." Blackie faced away from me. "Although I really wanted the pate." I put my backpack next to the dresser in the bedroom. Mom gave me the small bedroom while she slept on the couch. She said the couch was better for her back, but I didn't believe it. Back in the living area, the two small windows let in a bit of late afternoon light for Blackie to sunbathe in. The sidewalk outside was at eye level from the room, so I got to see lots of shoes and ankles as people walked by. I think Blackie liked it, though. He was probably imagining pouncing on all the ankles. It was one of his favorite activities. I placed Blackie's treats next to him on the ledge. He looked over his shoulder at me and then sniffed at them like they were a bribe to make him forget about the pate. Which they were. I sat at the computer desk next to the window. Okay, we need to figure something out because Miss Bertha might be talking to the head bellhop right now. Blackie stopped crunching the treats and picked up his head to look at me. "Do you want me to sneak into her office?" "No, that's a bad idea. If Miss Bertha sees a cat in the hotel, she'll take you away." "Fine." Blackie went back to eating his treats. If I go talk to her, I said, I can leave a listening device in her office. All I need is my mom's personal cell phone. I looked around. I know she leaves it in here while she's working, but I don't remember where. Blackie ran across the room and jumped up onto the kitchen counter. He used his paw to pull open a drawer. As soon as I saw him open the drawer, I remembered that's where the phone was. I followed Blackie to the kitchen. The phone was right there in the drawer where it always was. I picked it up and checked the battery. Fully charged. Thanks, Blackie. Do you need my help hiding the phone in Miss Bertha's office? He asked. You'd better stay here. So you're shutting me out? I'll leave my personal cell phone here with you. That way you can monitor the conversation while I'm walking back. If cats could smile, Blackie would have been smiling. Deal. Are you ready to be a spy? I asked. Yes. It sounds like more fun than chasing my tail, which is what I was thinking of doing. Good. What we're doing is called surveillance. What's that? Surveillance means to watch or to listen to someone to gather intelligence. It's getting information, but in a sneaky way so the person we're spying on doesn't know. I put my cell on the counter and called it from Mom's phone. Once the call connected, I muted my phone, put it on speaker, and stuck Mom's phone in my pocket. Okay, now you can listen. I'd better run to make sure I get to hide the phone in Miss Bertha's office before her meeting. Chapter 4. Poppy spies on Miss Bertha. After a few minutes of running down the winding hallways, I was outside of Mrs. Bertha's office. The head bellhop was at the far end of the hallway heading my way. Looked like I was just in time. I knocked on the door to Miss Bertha's office. Open, she barked. I opened the door and stuck my head in. Do you have a minute? I'm quite busy today. Her words were short and impatient. Come back tomorrow. I ignored her answer. Before she could protest, I was sitting on a chair next to a potted plant with large waxy leaves. It will only take a minute. The only response from Miss Bertha was an icy stare. My heart pounded. I took her silence as a sign to go ahead and keep talking. I sat as close to the plant as I could. I'm really sorry about Nicky. It was my fault. I was late to one of my online classes, and I asked him to give me a ride. Aren't your classes videos that you can watch at any point? She had a good point. Think, Poppy. There had to be some reason I needed to be in a hurry. An idea popped into my head. I had an assignment that I needed to get turned in, or I would miss the deadline. That's not my concern. Please leave, as I have other matters to attend to. Of course, my plan had never been to stay a long time. I pointed at an abstract painting on the opposite wall. Is that a Picasso? Miss Bertha looked in the direction of the painting. It was just a glance, really, but it was enough time for me to slip the phone behind the leaves of the waxy plant, except that I lost my nerve. I couldn't do it. I tried to find the pocket of my pants and slip the phone into it, but the smooth case slipped out of my shaking hands. I glanced down. It had disappeared among the leaves of the plant. Miss Poppy, the hotel does not put Picassos in employee offices. Even you should know that, despite your lack of a conventional education. Of course, I'm sorry to have bothered you. The phone was planted, so there was no point in continuing the meeting. I slipped out the door and sprinted back to the apartment. I was out of breath when I got home a few minutes later. I found Blackie sitting where I left him, on the kitchen counter with one paw resting on the phone. I leaned on the counter next to him. What's happening? The head bellhop doesn't want to fire Nicky. He says that Nicky always shows up for work on time, works hard, and is polite. She won't care about that. I doubted the head bellhop's praise could save Nicky's job. She liked that Nicky stopped using m'lady and m'lord when they asked him to, but she says he still talks funny. She's got a point. The head bellhop added that Nicky has stopped saying, "Beam me up, Scotty," every time he gets in the elevator with a guest. And returning guests ask for him personally to take their bags to their rooms. All right, Miss Bertha's clipped voice came over the speaker. I'll let him stay this time, but you need to let him know that if anything like this happens again, he will be fired. Of course, thank you. I imagined the head bellhop bowing and backing out of the room, but that probably wasn't what happened. The good news was Nicky wasn't getting fired. The bad news was now I needed to figure out how to get Mom's cell phone back. The Spy Museum had taught me how to use a phone as a bug. It didn't say anything, though, about how to get the phone back after. The sound of a phone ringing came over the speaker. In the background, Miss Bertha answered the call with a brief, "Bertha here." A second later, she said, "I'll be right there," followed by the click of the door closing. This was my chance. "Blackie," I said, "I'll be right back. I'm going to get the phone back." Blackie put his paw on my arm. "Be careful. If Miss Bertha catches you, I don't remember the word, but it will be bad." Over the speaker of the phone, it sounded like the door opened again. A female voice I didn't recognize spoke.
"We can talk in here," the woman said. "This is the only office that Bertha doesn't have cameras in, and I made sure she won't be back for a while."
The woman had arranged for Miss Bertha to get pulled away? This was curious. "Let's keep listening," I said to Blackie. "For sure. My catty sense is tingling." "I don't even know what that is." "It's like spidey sense, but for cats."
"Great. Now be quiet so I can hear what she's saying."
The same woman said,
"We need to figure some things out if we're going to steal the Duchess Emerald necklace. Like, how are you going to get me into the room with the hotel safe?"
Blackie bristled, the hairs on his back standing upright. A man with a rough voice answered,
"I got a key to the room with the safe. No one knows I have it."
"You're brilliant." The woman sounded like she was smiling. "What about the code to the safe?"
"The idiots installed a security camera in the safe room. They probably think that makes things safer, but I'm gonna hack the camera feed. On Wednesday evenings, the hotel invites the important guests to a special event where a Fabergé egg is taken out of the safe and put on display."
"So you're going to use the security camera to see what code they use to open the safe?"
"Uh-huh. I've installed a hidden access code into the computer system, a trick so I can see all the camera footage."
"Did I mention that you're brilliant?" I imagined the woman beaming at the man. "So when they get the egg out of the safe on Wednesday, you'll be watching?"
"Can't do that because the manager of IT will be in the office then. The camera footage is stored for 24 hours, so I just have to wait until after he leaves on Wednesday, and then I can break into his office and view the footage on his computer."
"All right. What time?"
"The egg viewing event ends at 8, and the manager of IT leaves right after. The front desk staff changes over at 9, so I'll do it then. They won't be paying attention because they'll be going through the evening transition."
"Wonderful. Once you get the code to the safe, I'll break in on Friday after the Duchess gets here." She giggled. "I can't wait to sell that gem-packed necklace."
"And I'm getting a new boat."
The man sounded gleeful. "And I know the perfect person to blame for the theft." The woman's voice had switched to scheming. Blackie hunched over the phone, his tail tense but not moving. I felt the same way. This was a big deal. We were hearing the details of a crime, just like true spies.
"Don't leave me hanging," the man said. "Who are we going to blame?"
"The head of housekeeping. She has access to all the rooms and to the safes. I can dress to look like her from behind and make sure that my face doesn't show up on the camera. I'll also make sure she doesn't have an alibi. And she's the one who puts the egg back in the safe, so make sure to get her security codes, not someone else's."
"That's perfect."
The man laughed the cruelest laugh I had ever heard. "So heartless and selfish."
"And then once she gets fired, we won't have to worry about her anymore."
"Revenge and money." More giggling. "How much time do we have to plan?"
"The Duchess gets here this week on Friday. We need to have everything in place by then."
The man laughed his awful laugh again.
"We're gonna be rich."
"Come on, let's go before Bertha comes back." The door clicked. I held my breath as if the couple might hear if I moved. "What?" Blackie asked, his fur standing on end. I was stunned. We had to stop them, but where to start? "Blackie, there are over 200 employees working in this hotel. How are we going to figure out who they are? The only thing we know is that it's a man and a woman, and the man has an awful laugh." Blackie rubbed his head on my arm. "Don't worry, Poppy. We'll go to the spy museum every day for ideas, and we'll use every single spy tool to figure out who they are." Blackie was talking like he was going to be able to help, but in less than a day, the intelligence was going to wear off. It didn't help that I couldn't tell my mom or I would get in trouble for spying on Miss Bertha. I felt lost. My mom's gonna get fired. Not if we can stop it. What day is it today? As a homeschooler, my days tended to run together. I looked at my phone. Sunday. We have almost a week to figure this out and stop them. I scratched his back. I could really use your help right now. I can spy on people, but it's no good if you don't understand them. We need to convince Jeremiah to let you eat the spy cat food. Blackie's ears perked up. We're going to ask Jeremiah if I can keep eating the smart cat food? He licked his lips. I'll ask if he'll share at least until we figure out who the thieves are and how to stop them, I said. Blackie twitched his tail. So where do we pounce first?